Discover Hydro, the best kept secret in fitness. Hydro is the state-of-the-art at-home rower that engages 86% of your muscles, delivering the ultimate full-body workout in just 20 minutes. From advanced to beginner, Hydro has over 500 classes, shot worldwide and taught by Olympians and world-class athletes. For a 30-day risk-free trial, go to hydro.com and use code ROW450 to save $450 on a Hydro Pro rower. That's HYDROW.com, code ROW450.
Hi, this is Jonathan Fields, host of The Good Life Project, where each week I talk to listeners about investing in their future by increasing their own vitality. But when it comes to those financial goals, whether it be saving for a home renovation, growing your child's college fund, or travel, life can make it difficult to stay the course. By working with a dedicated Merrill advisor, you get a personalized plan and a clear path forward. Having the bull at your back helps your whole financial life move with you. So when your plans change, Merrill's with you every step of the way. Go to ml.com/bullish to learn more. Merrill, a Bank of America company. What would you like the power to do? Investing involves risk. Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith Incorporated, registered broker-dealer, registered investment advisor, member SIPC.
Hello, EggChasers. It's the EggChasers Rugby Podcast, the podcast about rugby that doesn't take itself or the game too seriously. And I was about to say, just because we've been saying it for 11 years now, back in the rugby dungeon, but of course we're not in the rugby dungeon. We are all scattered to the winds in our respective EggChasers TMO shipping containers. Mine is in South Manchester. Phil's is in another part of South Manchester. JB, where is yours?
I'm in Cyprus. I'm in my lair in Cyprus.
Lair. Tell us more.
Bloody hot here. I am so miserable. It's hard to describe how miserable I am. But yeah, I've landed. I've got no gym as such to go to. I've shown up. The apartment's full of rubbish food. I put on about 6 stone in 24 hours. Feel awful. Feel absolutely awful. So tomorrow I'm going to discover a CrossFit gym and try and get back into it. I hate holidays.
You've got body dysmorphia, JB.
That's what I signed up for.
But yeah, you get to spend time with your lovely family, though. Swings around.
Oh, yeah, I mean, of course.
All right, well, firstly, thank you very much for listening. And if you appreciate the fact that we're there for you 52 weeks of the year, for, like I say, we're about to go into season number 12. Is that right?
It is.
Wow. Yes.
I know.
Let's say
all
yes.
of them without Blake.
That's nuts. Yeah, if you appreciate that fact, hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and go and get more content at patreon.com/EggChasers. Got some good interactions on the email with last week's episode, JB.
Say if we make it to like 20 years of doing podcasting, shall we invite Blake back for a podcast to see what he's done since? Because I think in our absence, or in his absence, he's only gone and played for Canada Rugby League.
Has he really?
Yeah.
If you're not sure what JB's referring to, he's referring to go to the very first episodes of the podcast in your feed 11 years ago, and for the first 2 or maybe 3 episodes, there was a chap called Blake who was there for his rugby league prowess. He went on to become an international.
Yeah. So here's a little story for you, a little bit before we get into it. So Blake came to Broughton Park, which is where I met him, and obviously you probably played with him as well, Tim, didn't you? And then obviously we did the podcast. Now, Blake only came to our club because he's in university, but other than that, he was a rugby league guy. He ended up going back to rugby league in Canada, but because he's a rugby league guy, he got another guy called Mike Butt into MMU, Manchester Met Rugby League. This guy's called Mike Butt. Mike Butt also went on to captain Swinton for most of his career. Just moved over to Widnes Vikings, I want to say. He got player of the season there. And has also played for Wales.
Wow. Everyone that's connected to the podcast, not in the podcast, has gone on to do great things on the sporting field.
Oh, yeah, and we just dedicated our lives to bringing rugby to the masses. So we're heroes in a different way.
True. Very true. Patreon.com/EggChasers for more content and maybe one day a Blake Returns special. We will have to get that done at some point. So we've got Rugby Championship games to look forward to this coming weekend. South Africa against New Zealand, first game they've played since the Rugby World Cup final, the two most successful teams in history. We can get into all of that. But there has actually been more rugby news than you would have expected to have seen at this stage. So I'll just rattle through a couple of stories. Number one, in a pre-season friendly, Courtney Laws got one over on Stuart Lancaster. And I don't know whether he duels police on Stuart Lancaster's son, but it was Dan Lancaster was playing 10 for Racing 92 in a pre-season friendly against Brive.
Oh, nice. Nice.
The Pro D2 season starts next weekend as well. And the top 14 the week after. But yeah, Brive looking good with Courtney involved. What else? Anything else before? Oh, Leon McDonald left his role as assistant coach for New Zealand. We can come to that in a minute, but it was employment of another coach that's got the big headlines in the last 24 hours or so. What do you make of Felix Jones leaving England?
Well, not much is the answer. So I think this is one of those stories that has really gripped the rugby journalism world because, well, nothing else is really happening. Now, I've got a feeling that we are massively over-egging the pudding with Felix Jones. I'm just going to hold my thoughts for a second there because I think that. You've done a bit of a video about him, have you not, Tim? So I assume you've got some stronger feelings than I have about his departure.
Well, in short, I think he is one of, and probably on a very short list of most talented young coaches in world rugby, along with, actually, funnily enough, some other Irishmen, along with the likes of Ronan O'Gara. I think he is... And if you look at the way Steve Borthwick spoke about him during the Six Nations, it was in the most glowing terms. Everyone connected with South Africa said he was a massively important part of the reason why they won back-to-back Rugby World Cups. And it's just strange that it's happened after 10 months, particularly 2 weeks after Aled Walters has gone as the S&C coach, incredibly highly rated coach as well. We were talking about him on the podcast only a few weeks ago and how highly rated he is. And the two things together, and the fact that and this is from a source, but the journalist that broke this story, Peter O'Reilly of The Times, said that it was due to an unstable working environment. I think that does make it more of an issue than had it just been, do you know what, I haven't settled and I want to move with my family back to Ireland or whatever it may be. Phil, I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And it's too early in Felix Jones's involvement in England. They played 7 games, and had a good Six Nations, and then lost 2 in New Zealand. That maybe they could have done better on those. But it's probably too early to say his true influence. But he's highly rated, and it's the second coach leaving in a short period of time, and with the rumours of disruption and unstable environment. That's probably the bigger thing to take out of this from me, because those were certainly allegations of the England setup under Eddie Jones, and a lot of people hoped that Borthwick would be more stabilising. But it doesn't seem to be, for all the good things about Borthwick. Perhaps some of that instability is continuing right up to this point.
Yeah. So,
any thoughts now we've had ours, AJ?
Yeah, well, okay, so the Felix Jones thing, I kind of file it under, Ben Ryan winning the Sevens with Fiji. So he's got 2 World Cups, and that's obviously nothing to be sniffed at. You've got to win the World Cups. But, if there was a job in coaching I would want, which I think is probably, the easiest one to achieve, it's going to be defence. And if I'm going to pick a bunch of guys that I want to defend for me, I'd probably pick South Africa. So, it is cool he's won two World Cups, but, if you watch the South African defence, is it special because it's some magical system? No, not really. It's special because those blokes are special. You've got a pack of 7 superhumans and a supposed great leader with the unbelievable Quagga Smith coming off the bench. What more do you need? So I just think some coaches are incredibly fortuitous with the surroundings that they have. Now, obviously, you've got to get to that situation. Nobody just walks into South Africa, so it's obviously got to be quite good. I think we just need to temper our attitudes towards him a touch. In the Times, it said the guy who was credited, not the guy who did it, but the guy who was credited with revolutionising England's defence. I'm not saying England's defence isn't good. I'm just saying, what is the Felix Jones aspect of that defence, which I really love? I mean, do you look at the England defence and go, that is a Felix Jones defence? Or do you just say, well, that kind of looks like the England defence? I mean, what is it that he's actually done so far? So if I'm going to lose a coach, it'd be a defensive coach, because I think you can get them almost anywhere, frankly. And
Jay, I am going to suggest that you turn your camera off to save the bandwidth. I've made a note of the time, so I'll nick this out. There you go. Cool. I do hear what you're saying. I'm gonna suggest to anyone that's able to go and, obviously legally and not by any nefarious means, go and watch the Chasing the Sun 2 documentary series about South Africa's 2023 World Cup campaign. And I'd say 2 things. It's very, very clear that Felix Jones has a very, very broad impact as a coach. And he is not solely defined by his one area. In England's case, he was looking after the defence. He was incredible. Steve Borthwick said he's come up with things that he's never heard a coach come up with. Unrivaled rugby knowledge is what Steve Borthwick said. And Steve Borthwick said he presented this is during the Six Nations, he said he presented to the England team and the room has never been so deathly silent. He's clearly a very, very special coach. And that, the other evidence of that is the fact that he's not England's defence coach. He's their assistant coach. He was Steve Borthwick's number 2.
He's been promoted, hasn't he? He got promoted last week or a month ago or some such thing.
Yeah, and the other, the other element I'll just chuck in, just on the instability is, and I wonder if this is part of it, Alan Walters has gone, but also Kevin Sinfield was going, then he's staying, then he's moved roles, so there's maybe a lack of clarity. I don't know. Yeah,
I'll come to Sinfield in a second, but I think it is more important that he's gone in terms of he's actually gone. And what I mean by that is the effect on the coaching team. I don't think it's good to have a unstable coaching team in any way. Back to how impressive he was. I'm really fortunate that I've been able to speak to a lot of Premiership coaches now. And actually Premiership coaches, not just head coaches, but guys who do positional skill work, all the rest of it. And I find them all pretty impressive, to be honest. I think when you consider the amount of guys that come through professional rugby, only a handful of them stay on as coaches, and only a handful of them can ever coach at the top. So I think they're all fairly impressive. I don't think that's unique to Jones. If you listen to, I know who we sat with. We sat with Gus Dodd in Paris. He was quite impressive. Been for a few beers and interviewed Baxter. He's very impressive. I mean, I think at that level they're all really impressive, and that's why they're there. So it doesn't bother me as much as I'd be much more concerned if the attack coach went. Well, they need an attack coach first, but if they had an attack coach. Do you know what? I'm going to take it one further, right? I'm going to go really all in here, right? Which is being a top coach, like a head man, either Premiership or international, has got far more with practicing your charisma than it does about practicing your rugby. I would not be surprised if there's far better rugby coaches out there who are not nearly as charismatic, who do not get the gig. Not to pick on one guy, but the guy who always comes to mind is just the sheer nonsense that Alex Sanderson sometimes talks about. Now, he undoubtedly knows his rugby, right? But does he know his rugby that much better than everyone else? What is his key differential feature? And it's the fact that he's so charismatic. So back to when people talk about these guys with glowing praise, that I think a lot of the time their number one thing is just their charisma, and they're ability to bluff about how much that they know. Because I'm certain that you can't know that much about defence. You just can't.
So I think that stuff probably washes with a lot of journalists. It probably washes with us more. It probably washes with Premiership coaches or CEOs of England rugby.
Oh, yeah.
Someone I would certainly hope it doesn't wash with is someone like Steve Borthwick, who himself is not particularly charismatic. It's never the first thing I think about him when I listen to him. I think of him almost entirely as a rugby thinker and a rugby brain. And so I would certainly hope that charisma is something that Borthwick would see past instantly and just promote the best rugby man, rugby brain for the job he's looking for.
I'd like to think that as well, because I actually think Steve Borthwick's CV, without any World Cups on it, is actually far more impressive than Felix Jones's. And the reason I think that is because the ability to take Leicester Tigers from the worst team in the country to the best team in the country in the space of 3 years is absolutely remarkable. So I think there's that. But on Borthwick as well, he is. I remember him in an interview for Leicester Tigers when he's coach there, saying that this year he'd read X number of books. Now, I don't know if they're coaching books or if they're rugby books or if they're business books or what, but he clearly does value that sort of esoteric thinking where you're trying to get the extra 1% here or there from overlapping subjects which aren't quite rugby, but you're trying to kind of get that. And so, yeah, I mean...
I think it's. If I can jump in, Jay, I think it's slightly strange the way you're brushing aside Felix Jones so casually, and you were talking up Aled Walters so massively only a couple of weeks ago, and you're now talking up Steve Borthwick when it was Steve Borthwick who no one has spoken about Felix Jones in more glowing terms than Borthwick.
Sorry, that's kind of the point that I'm trying to make. That Steve Borthwick really does value these sort of esoteric thinkers, because he does it himself. He tries to get all these random things which you've never heard about and then apply them to rugby. So it doesn't surprise me that he thinks so highly of Felix Jones, and same with Aled Walters too. Actually, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but sometimes I think you're so focused on finding the thing that nobody else knows about that maybe you're not thinking about your core job.
There was a really interesting example in Chasing the Sun 2. It was the France quarter-final. In the build-up to that, Felix Jones just turned up at a coach's meeting with his laptop looking like he hadn't slept and just went, right, I went down a bit of a YouTube rabbit hole. I've got some thoughts. And he'd been looking at all of the clips that the media release of little bits of training of France and when they release their little clips. And I can't remember exactly what he spotted, but he spotted one element of the breakdown, a call that they use and what they do. And it was one of the key tactical focuses that the Springboks used in that World Cup quarter-final. Suffice to say, I guess the point I'm making, actually all Felix Jones did was just get so obsessed and go and look at so much game tape and spot one little thing. But I'll go so far as to say South Africa do not beat France without that rugby acumen and work ethic combined.
I think there's things like that, and other things like the taking a scrum from a mark type thing. That even Nienaber and Rassie Erasmus spoke about that after the World Cup and said those are the kind of things that you can build a narrative on when they go well, when the game goes well, after something like that's been highlighted before the game or during the game. The press and everyone else around them build this narrative that is one of the things that worked. But there's lots of things that they try that no one picks up on that simply don't work, or maybe even do work, but no one picks up on it. And so there is a little bit, I do often think there's a bit of confusing correlation and causation with these things.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, just to move this on slightly. Oh, yeah, you were going to say something about Sinfield, JB.
Oh, yeah. So in the Times, they were talking about the problem with Kevin Sinfield, of course, is no one can criticise him because he's done some remarkable things. But they were talking about the unstable work environment and I think it was Jones that was writing something along the lines of, he shouldn't maybe take over England's defence, and he doesn't even know if he wants to be there, but he should hang around to be a mentor to the players. And I just have no time for this. Like, I'm not saying he's not a brilliant bloke and he's not done brilliant things, but you really need to keep someone around to be a mentor to players. I think that's ludicrous. And if you're going to have a mentor to players, I mean, why? Well, in that case, and if it's not for rugby reasons, it's because of his charitable reasons, well, why not open the door to absolutely everybody?
Am I right in saying that it was apparently some players' intervention was part of the reason why Sinfield stayed?
I've not heard that story.
I don't know if that's just me making it up or a complete... I've got no idea if that's true or not. But,
I mean, he's genuinely an inspiring guy.
Yeah.
I just don't know if the national team need to spend any money on mentors. I mean, not only do they not need to spend any money on mentors, how many people would be willing to do it for free?
So, I'm sure Sinfield, it's been announced twice since the World Cup that he's going, and then he's still around. So there is something weird going on there, and I do think he's perhaps not the best coach at this moment in time. He could be. He could at some stage be, because he's still pretty early in his coaching career. But he does seem like a good guy to have around. But then it's if England paid X £100,000 or indeed X £1 million to get him and Borthwick out of their contracts at Leicester, and presumably they're paying him quite good money, how much are they willing to pay to have someone who's good to have around if they're not adding that much to the coaching setup?
Yeah,
it does seem a bit of a weird.
Is that the criteria
situation.
to be around England? Exactly. Is that the criteria to be good around to be in England camp, good around the lads?
So I wonder if this might, we're purely speculating here, but I wonder if this might be part of this unstable working relationship. Because let's not forget the job which Felix Jones had when he exited England was Kevin Sinfield's old job. And the guy whose job he had is still around.
Still there.
Yeah. Well, it could be looking more broadly to the RFU. I understand that they're about to go through another round of redundancies, either next week or week after. That will be announced. So I don't entirely understand the unstable working relationship or environment, because I would assume that the England coaches are all pretty stable. Borthwick is not really one to chop and change too much. People do leave all the time for various reasons. So I don't know. Maybe it's a broader RFU thing.
That seems to be generally what a lot of people are saying. I do find, and I'm not coming to a conclusion here. I'm pointing out it's quite funny from sat where I am that when it was Eddie Jones, when a coach would leave, it was Eddie's an awful man, Eddie's dreadful, and now 3 coaches have left Steve Borthwick's roster in the last few weeks, and the vast majority of comments I'm seeing anyway are saying, all RFU are dreadful, RFU are awful.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It might be the RFU and Eddie got an unfair stick, or it might have been both when Eddie was there. That it was Eddie and the RFU that made it so intolerable.
I agree that it was. Sorry, I agree. It was Eddie's fault when it happened to Eddie, and the RFU's fault when it happens to the RFU.
What about Steve Borthwick though?
To be honest, I know people have worked with him. And I've never heard anything negative about his working practices. I mean, people just really like working with him.
So it's the same is true when you talk to England players. I interviewed Courtney Laws a couple of months ago. I think I've said this on the pod before. Of every coach he's ever worked under, his favourite coach, Eddie Jones.
Yeah, but you know why that is?
Because he's a great coach?
No, because Eddie has his favourites, right? Courtney could not play for a whole year and still come back into the team. Like, Courtney loves Warren Gatland. Why is that? Well, because he's injured for the entire year, and then he still played him for the Lions. You know, if you're a great player, unsurprisingly, you love all the coaches, because unsurprisingly, they adore you. Look, Eben Etzebeth likes all his coaches. Find me the coach that's fallen out with Eben Etzebeth recently.
I bet Eben Etzebeth would say of all of the coaches that he likes, he loves Rassi Erasmus the most.
Definitely, because he's got him 2 World Cups and he picks him for the Springboks. I would love Rassie Erasmus.
Maybe he's won 2 World Cups because he's really, really good.
I think you're probably right there. You'd have to look a little bit further down the Springbok team to find the lads that don't like Rassie Erasmus, who didn't get picked. And they've got a completely different view.
Well, Felix Jones was quite happy there for 6 years as well, which tells another story.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it does come across like I'm anti-Felix Jones. I'm not. I think he's a great coach. I just don't think it's the biggest problem in the world.
No, certainly coaching a blitz defence isn't a completely new skill to get over if you're a coach. Lots of other people can do that. But as I say, I think there's a whole lot of rugby IQ England have just lost. And we don't know why.
Yeah, that's the more concerning bit for me, is you've got 2 guys who are clearly very highly thought of, whatever anyone else, but in the game they're very highly thought of, and they're both leaving the England setup. Whether they are the best guys in the world or not, it is concerning that you've got people who are that well thought of willing just to drop out of the setup. Presumably the plan was for Felix Jones and Alad to take England to the next World Cup.
Yep.
So you've got to find a new plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at least it's happened nice and early on.
Which can be also said of Leon MacDonald at the All Blacks. That's quite strange, given that Scott Robertson and Leon MacDonald worked together at the Crusaders. 5 games in.
Yeah, I knew absolutely nothing about this. But I know nothing about Leon MacDonald as a coach either. So any information that you can give me, feel free.
He was Scott Robertson's assistant coach at the Crusaders, and then he went off and became the head coach of the Blues. Then he's part of Scott Robertson's coaching setup as his assistant, and he's left after 5 matches. And what was cited was that it just didn't click, and they couldn't see eye to eye. And bearing in mind they know each other very well, that's really strange.
Yeah. That is strange.
Leon MacDonald was in charge of the attack for New Zealand.
Yeah. I mean, I would have thought that New Zealand would be a bit more careful with their due diligence, knowing how coaching setups are picked for the Premiership. Those particular relationships are very important. So I'm surprised that the New Zealand Union didn't actually look at that a bit closer, because after 5 games, it doesn't suggest that they've done as much research as they possibly should have. I
think possibly, and again, we're purely speculating here because we don't know anything beyond the sort of headline that's been told. We might have to wait for an autobiography in the future. But I think possibly it just highlights the massive step up in pressure at international level from provincial or club level, because Scott Robertson, I looked back at what he said when he was appointed about his coaching team, and he was very, very, he was talking all about everyone's going to have their area, and I believe in trusting people to do their part and stuff. And I think possibly they beat England, but not convincingly. They lost to Argentina, and possibly maybe Scott Robertson saw his arse a little bit and realised, hold on a minute, this is international level, it's another step up. I need to take control. And rather than maybe wanted a bit more control than he told the world and maybe Leon MacDonald he was prepared to give him.
Yeah, maybe. Well, if that's the case, it doesn't speak well of Scott Robertson. I mean, just giving it 5 games and deciding that he needs to rip up his approach and do something completely different, or get a tighter. I mean, was he like that in the Crusaders? The answer is I don't know enough about his coaching to say so.
Phil's watched a fair bit of Super Rugby with Scott Robertson at the helm, and I know Todd Blackadder couldn't go and win with basically the same cattle, but the Crusaders have had the best bunch of players in that competition for a while now.
They've had a hell of a bunch of players, but they've also played good rugby, and they've got the most out of those players.
True.
So it's right to get Scott Robertson is absolutely the right call for that team based on what he's done. It's then I don't know enough about Liam McDonald because he had some pretty successful years with the Blues, but nowhere near as much as Scott Robertson with Crusaders. And I don't know on this whole thing, I don't know how much of it is Scott Robertson, how much of it is Liam McDonald. He doesn't like being number 2 after being number 1.
Yeah.
Admittedly, or number 2, or maybe even lower than number 2. I don't know the exact coaching setup at the All Blacks, but he'd prefer to be number 1 in a smaller team rather than a smaller cog in a bigger team.
Yeah, maybe.
It is. The whole thing is odd, though, exactly as you set out before, Tim. This timing, partway through a championship, partway through the Rugby Championship is a weird time to do it. So, yeah.
I think one thing that I find quite interesting, particularly with they've flown out and they're in South Africa now preparing for the game this weekend. In 2019, when Scott Robertson applied to be the All Black coach and didn't get it, he had Tony Brown as his assistant coach and attack coach. And in 2023, he did not try and recruit Tony Brown. He took Leon McDonald instead of Tony Brown, who is now with the Box.
Is that because Tony Brown's with the Box?
Yes, he's the attack coach.
So I don't know. I have no idea what Tony Brown does as a coach, right? As in, like, if you showed me some game tape and said who coaches team, I couldn't tell you it's Tony Brown. I do know he has got one phenomenal reputation. So he was he Highlanders with Jamie Joseph, and then they went to Japan together.
Correct.
And that was like the dream ticket. And now he's with the Box. I did not know
He's the
that.
attack coach there. And the thought is that Rassie Erasmus saw the law changes that were coming in from World Rugby, looking at the personnel that he had, and the fact the backline is pretty stacked with some really good talents, guys like Sasha Feinberg and Gomazulu coming through. And let's get Tony Brown in to evolve the way South Africa play.
Oh, well, there you go. Just shows I need to pay more attention to Southern Hemisphere rugby.
That's all right. Well, we've got a bit of a Premiership focus on this podcast as well. Any more?
Thank God.
In terms of news and stuff?
The Ireland High Performance Director, David, whatever his name is, has gone to Scotland. No, I have no idea if that's a big deal or not, but he has gone to Scotland.
Cool. Isn't he also covering Australia?
Got no idea. Is that right?
I saw something, I can't remember where it was, that said he's working with Schmidt in Australia and also taking a consulting role for Scotland, which...
maybe.
I mean, I know Eddie Jones did one of the Japanese, Suntory Sunglass or someone like that, and England, but they don't play against each other very often. So
Brilliant.
Slight conflict there.
Yeah, I just find it weird, with international rugby, like the never-ending merry-go-round of the same people enforcing the same pathways for different countries, and everyone expecting to get different results over and over again. Like this whole Schmidt thing, going from Ireland to New Zealand to Australia, and then you got this guy going from Ireland to Scotland, and it just seems to be this like tier of people that have checked out of the club game, which is where I really do believe results matter and skills get honed. And they just go in circles, and they're not even responsible for the most part for any results. It's not like, oh, well, Ireland lost, we've got to get rid of this David fella. Like, they just go round and round and round. I'd like to see much more appointments to the international game from club structures rather than poaching from each other's unions. So I just don't see where that leads, other than more of the same.
I think basically what Australia and Scotland are buying there is IP, isn't it? Tell us what you did with your pathways and your systems that have made Ireland such a good team, basically.
But there's the thing, isn't there? Like, don't try and be the best, try and be the only. And I really subscribe to that. So whatever you're going to do, try and make it at least a bit unique. And if you're going to buy the Ireland high performance guy, you better have equal, if not better, resources than Ireland. Otherwise, what's the point?
Just on the coaching thing, before we depart this, John Clark has emailed us, contact eggchasers@gmail.com. He said, to paraphrase Oscar Wilde, to lose one top-notch coach is a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. He might be onto something there.
I did see that, and I kind of like that. It does sum up my concerns are less about losing the talent of the coaches, and it's more about what it says of the setup.
Yeah.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be.
Hi, this is Jonathan Fields, host of The Good Life Project, where each week I talk to listeners about investing in their future by increasing their own vitality. But when it comes to those financial goals, whether it be saving for a home renovation, growing your child's college fund, or travel, life can make it difficult to stay the course. By working with a dedicated Merrill advisor, you get a personalized plan and a clear path forward. Having the bull at your back helps your whole financial life move with you. So when your plans change, Merrill's with you every step of the way. Go to ml.com/bullish to learn more. Merrill, a Bank of America company. What would you like the power to do? Investing involves risk. Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith Incorporated, registered broker-dealer, registered investment advisor, member SIPC.
Do you want to preview the season for another Premiership club?
Yeah, where are we up to?
Well, we've got 3 left to go. Is that right? What did we do last week? Bristol Bears. We've got Bristol Bears, Leicester, and Gloucester. Have we done Gloucester?
Should we do Bristol?
We've not done Bristol. I don't think.
No, we haven't done Bristol. We haven't done Leicester.
Well, let's Bristol.
We've not done Leicester. We'll save Leicester for next week.
Of those 3, Bristol finished higher, so let's do them next.
Well, I've got an email here from Ed Whittaker. Contact eggchasers@gmail.com. Thank you, Ed. And if you are, we've already got some in, but if you're a fan of Leicester Tigers, I think Gloucester's the other one we haven't done. Then, get your thoughts in. So, Ed says, leaving are a couple of Bristol legends in Sheedy, fantastic servant and great memories, but probably the right time, and Dan Thomas, who epitomised everything that is enjoyable about watching Bristol, but was never trusted by Lamb. Also losing Bradbury, whose effort and engine were top draw, but it could be argued lacked the handling and carrying of world-class 8s. Sinclair also leaves, gets a bit of grief, but in his final season, with some fitness, put in some really impressive performances. Also, Piers O'Connor, who had some incredible moments in a Bears shirt, but has suffered from the coming and goings of bigger names in the centre, including Vakatawa, who also leaves. After an entire season of silence, Chris Vui is also omitted from squad after it. Yeah, I actually, has his situation been publicly stated? I think I'll swerve the reason why he's leaving. Anyway.
Well, it's something to do with drug tests, isn't it?
Has that been publicly reported? Okay, fine.
It has now.
Okay.
I'll just say it.
Fine.
Yeah. It's something to do with drug tests.
Yes, at the last World Cup, isn't it?
And they haven't got to the bottom of why it happened and who's culpable, basically, is what's going on. Okay,
Ed says, either way, he was a massive player for us and his absence possibly attributed to the slow start last season. Coming in is Big Bill Matter, should suit our style of play, but needs to be as consistent as Bradbury. What do you think about that as a signing? He's getting towards the end of his career, but it kind of feels like when they had... Who did they have? Nathan Hughes? No, he was at Wasps.
He did. No, they did have Nathan Hughes. Oh, they spent a fortune on Nathan Hughes.
Yeah, they did, didn't they?
An absolute fortune.
So, Bill Matter...
So spent like...
Oh, sorry, go on.
They spent an absolute fortune on Nathan Hughes, and then he fell out, unsurprisingly, with Pat Lam. And then they loaned him to Bath, and he played well again.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And then he went to Japan, and he plays for Ryok Black Rams off the top of my head, but you need to fact check that. I'm pretty sure I'm 100% correct. He might have done something with France very briefly.
He is currently playing he is currently playing for Black Rams.
Bill Matter, good signing.
I mean, okay.
I think he could be a very good signing. I think so. He's 32. He's also 6'5" and the best part of 120 kg. And when he's playing his best, he is awesome. It's whether you can get the best out of him.
Yeah, I don't know where Bradbury's gone, but I really liked him. I thought he was a top end quality player. Could really bang, could really carry. I agree with the hands might not be the best, but that's not why I signed Marcus Bradbury. And in some ways, that's exactly what Bristol need. Just someone a bit firm.
Well, actually, I was just going to say, I think Bill Matter kind of does the job of a focus ball carrier that will make some dents in the defensive line, but maybe more so than Bradbury, his offloading is awesome, and that really suits Bristol. So I think he could be.
I would say
Bill Matter at Bristol, I think, really works.
And it's a swap. It's a swap as well, as in it's not explicitly a swap, but Matter comes from Edinburgh, Bradbury goes to Edinburgh.
Got it. It's weird. A lot of the back rows that do well at Bristol are more confrontational types. So Dan Thomas is not Mr. Skill. He's a bit of a breakdown menace. But they've had Sam Jeffries recently, Fitz Harding. I wouldn't class those as sort of flair back rows. They are both just hard players. And of course, what's his name?
Luatua.
Bloody captain who's been there. Yeah, he was a super hard man. So when you're going to play like Bristol, you do need a spine, and I think that's what those players in particular give. If Bill Matter can do that and everything else, wonderful stuff.
Ed goes on to say other notable incomers are Lovejoy Chatawama to add cover in the front row.
Yeah, fine.
Some excitement in the back row with Argentinian brothers Santi and Ben Grondona. Signed last year, but yet to appear in the Prem after Santi was injured for all of last season. Should offer genuine depth with Fitz Harding, Luatua and James Dunn. Overall, happy with the squad. We should draw confidence from how we finished last season and need Lamb and the players to trust the Bristol way, quote unquote. The impression was that Lamb lost confidence in his approach after the Quins semi-final loss and looked to change our approach based on the global trend of trying to win rugby matches by not playing any rugby. It didn't work for us at all. It negated the positives and highlighted the weaknesses in the squad he had built since his arrival. It also frustrated the fans who turn out in very good numbers and who on the whole understand you can't win all games and that there's an element of luck required to win trophies, but had been won over with the positive ball-in-hand rugby. What do you think about that? Because we've spoken about the deep wound that festered and was never really treated after that Quins semi-final. I hadn't really thought that it was Pat Lamb lost confidence in the way that Bristol play. I hadn't thought of it like that.
Don't know really. I mean, I've always considered it slightly differently, which was the game where Bristol were found wanting, and rather than Pat Lamb losing confidence, he didn't have the answers. And the Premiership, like if you see something in the Premiership, whether it be a nice move or a nice line out, and it's truly unique, next week everybody's doing it. The Premiership is the ultimate league for copying each other. So as soon as Quins worked out, well, this is how you beat this is how you beat Bristol. Once it was done once, it was done multiple times. So I thought it was more of a situation where Pat Lamb just didn't know how to react. He went to different strategies, different ways of playing. They're not his way of playing, and naturally he'd be less successful by doing so.
Well, Quins only worked that out in the second half of that match. They were getting absolutely spanked.
Classic Quins.
Bristol were scoring at a point in a minute. It was 28 points to 0 after 28 minutes in that game. So it was on track to be 80-0. And then Quins figured it out.
I think there might be something in what Ed says, because Bristol had more of a balanced game and would kick a lot more. And actually, he's rightly pointed out that they were kind of throwing Hail Marys towards the end of the season and got themselves back in playoff contention. The kind of pressure was off. It was like win or bust. And they started playing, I think Ed's right, they started playing more like they did a few years back.
Yeah, I think there is. I think there is something in that because they did try. They went away from the more free flowing Bristol, and it's not. It's not to say that when they got to the top of the Premiership or got to the semi-final that they didn't have any of that. That they just ran everything from everywhere. They had one of the most successful lineouts and driving mauls in the season, so they weren't. It wasn't completely built on foundations of sand. But they did like to run a lot more and offload a lot more and play a lot more rugby and kick a lot less at that time. And they probably did go away from that a bit. And maybe that was Lamb losing a bit of confidence and trying to copy others rather than play his own style. Maybe there were other things as well that led to that, some less happy moments. But of last season, so Bristol, we mentioned this on the pod before, but Bristol, from round 3 to round 7 last season, had a 5-game losing streak. They then only lost 2 more games all season in their 11 remaining. So they had the single best second half of the season of all teams. And maybe that is they had less to lose, so they played it around a bit more. Maybe they got back to what they were good at. Maybe if they continue that trajectory, they'll be a very difficult team to beat because they've got a better run than Northampton Saints, a better run than Saracens, a better run than Sale, a better run than anyone in the second half of the season.
Yeah, I agree with that. They did finish the season last year very impressively. Yeah, I mean, when they play, they're hard to stop, unfortunately, because I don't particularly like Pat Lam.
Well, according to Ed, and again, I don't know the veracity of this, but it's obviously the word that's going around among Bristol fans. Pat Lam was reminded of the way that they used to play by Steve Lansdowne, prompting the return of running rugby. And long may it continue, says Ed. He goes on to say, although largely unmentioned by pundits picking teams of the season, Ibitoye was comfortably the best attacking outside back in the league. Comments on that? He did have a great season.
He had a brilliant season. He is a point of differential. I think he's great.
What did he say? Attacking, ball in
best attacking outside back in the league.
He's one of the best runners of a ball. Yeah,
yeah. He was excellent last year. Yeah.
If
they can get, sorry, I was just going to say if you can get Ibitoye on one wing and now Laugo, if you can keep him fit and prevent him from taking other players' heads off in the game and not suspended, those two with Max Malins at fullback is an awesome back three.
And Vakatawa can get the ball. You know,
he's gone now.
He can play a bit.
Yeah, he's gone.
Has he?
Yeah.
Where did he go?
He's released by
Bristol.
Bristol.
All that because in his handful of appearances, there were some signs that you might be seeing the old Vakatawa back, and in flashes he looked so much better than his opposition.
Mm. They have also got Ravuvu as well.
Yeah,
the Fijian winger / centre, who'll be quite handy, and probably the best inside centre in the league in Bernard Janty van Rensburg.
Yeah. Seem to be England's.
Hold your horses.
Seem to be England's Bernard Janty van Rensburg.
Yeah.
Hold your horses there. I really like James Williams. I think James Williams is a superb player. So Williams at 12 and then Rensburg at 13 works for me nicely.
Good combo.
I remember recommending James Williams to a championship recruiter. He said, yeah, we've watched him and he doesn't fit our DNA, so we didn't offer him a contract.
Is that because?
Can you imagine saying that? And here he is tearing up trees for Bristol.
So I'm just looking at his club history. He's had a pretty storied history. He's been all over the place. Moseley,
Nottingham.
So he was Birmingham, Moseley, Hartpury, Worcester, out on loan to Moseley, Sale, out on loan to Sale FC, back to Hartpury.
Nottingham first, though, I think.
If he was
Nottingham before Sale.
If he was Nottingham, it's not listed on his Wikipedia page.
Mm-hmm. He definitely was, 100%.
And then Bristol, where he was loaned for a third time, or went to Hartpury on loan for a third time. So he's been around the block.
Yeah, what I like about him is he's sort of nearly made it a couple of times. So he nearly made it a Sale. And he was pretty good there. I'd say pretty good. Like he showed up for the games that they put him in, and they thought he did well. And I love that guy because he's come up the hard way. If you list his clubs, he's sort of lost it again, and he's had to do it again. I just love that story.
Yeah.
So much better than he came through the academy and we gave him loads of chances, and he's still here.
So he's one of Pat Lamb's bin juice fines.
He's worthless. Yeah, worthless.
Yeah, he is good.
One of Pat's worthless players.
Where was I? Ed says Joe Batley playing lock had a highlight reel most centres would be proud of, and Thacker, whilst apparently not having the attributes required by England, continues to be unplayable in the Premiership. Sprinkle in arrested Ellis Genge, New England squad member Gabriel Ogre, Harry Randall and Max Malins with points to prove, and players like Ravuvu, as Phil already mentioned, Noah Heward and Naulango, which Phil also mentioned, we will worry all defence coaches. Fingers crossed the scars of Fingers crossed the scars of Bristanbul (brackets cringe) have finally healed, and we can return to the top four where the squad and the club deserve to be. Mon the Bears. Is that what Quins call that match? That semi-final, Bristanbul?
I've got no idea.
That's quite fun. It is a bit cringe, but it's also quite funny.
Did Ogre go on tour with England?
Say again, sorry.
Did Ogre go on tour with England? I know he was retained in the squad, but did he go on tour?
I think he did.
I think he did. I think he was the third hooker.
Yeah, I've got it off the top of my head. He was the third hooker, but didn't play.
Jamie George, Theo Dan, and who would normally be the third hooker? Who would have been before?
Cowan Dickey or Jack Walker?
Yeah,
it wasn't those two, was it?
Nope.
So what I was going to mention in my head is Ogre went to the first England camp, like the worthless England camp, where it's like no one in the semi-finals, no senior players, 9 guys show up and they run around for a bit. Do you know the camp that I mean?
Yeah, the one when the semi-finals are on and they get everyone that's not in the best 4, only in the worst 6 out of 10 teams.
Yes.
And utterly it turns out it's not that pointless because apparently he had a storming camp. And I've seen some videos of some of the things he did at hooker. He just basically went wild, and probably the reason that he was retained in the England team. But the videos of some of his skills in England camp are ridiculous.
I've got
yes, he was. So I've just checked the official, just to check the official squad announcement, and he was alongside the 2 you've listed before, Jamie George and Theo Dan.
I bet he'd be very useful in a World Cup. He's a legit back row when he wants to be. Plays hooker. It's the kind of guy you want.
He's a good player. Yeah, England have got some good options. Problem at hooker they've got is that their best player for a long time, or best hooker for a long time, is also their captain, but he's actually a declining force because he's about 33 or 34 with a lot of miles on the clock.
I'd say another potential issue is we have lots of good players in a certain mould. And you've just mentioned Gabriel Ogre, Theo Dan would be another. I'd put Harry Thacker in that mould as well, but obviously Steve Bolford doesn't fancy him. But when you look around the world at the hookers, and Malcolm Marks is just a different beast altogether, for example.
But on Malcolm Marks, right? So, I prefer Benambi, nevertheless. Those two are incredible, aren't they? But South Africa do have a fair few Gabriel Ogres, i.e. guys in the back row who step up to play hooker. So that might be the way that they look at going forward. Have you 2 big hookers and then someone to back them up somewhere on the field?
Well, the one, actually, the third hooker in their squad at the minute, who can play loose head prop as well, which I know you'll appreciate, JB.
I do.
Is Jan Hendrik Vessels, who's 6'3" and about 120 kgs or 115 kgs.
Brilliant. Can't wait.
Yeah.
In terms of Malcolm Marks, he is peerless, isn't he? Well, except for Benambi, which is a shame because they pay for the same country. I'm just trying to think. There's no one really. I mean, in terms of physicality, maybe Cowan Dickey. But do you know who he's very closely aligned to? I think the way he plays is Van der Merwe, the other amazing South African hooker who's not even mentioned. Yeah, not even mentioned for South Africa nowadays, but is an incredible player. But yeah, the size and the physicality of Marks is just, I can't think of anyone even close to him, actually.
He's superb.
He's a beast.
But that is
except for Benambi.
That is one of the things that England miss. It's the size of the boys. Because
and another one, I'll mention another one because there is someone that's up there with Malcolm Marks. I'd say he's actually currently better than Malcolm Marks. Piato Malvaca. He's a big boy.
I was going to say, do you know what Malvaca is listed at in terms of weight?
Yeah, I know. I've seen him listed as 125 kgs or something like that.
Not a chance. He's not that big. Malvaca's like 105, I would say.
So Malvaca is listed at 19.5 stone, 124 kg.
No, not true. Absolute fake news. No way. Unless he's putting a ton of weight.
You need to lift him up, JB. There's only one way we can determine this.
There's only one way to, yeah, absolutely. There's no way. He's more of an athletic hooker. I mean, he's broad, but he's not the size of Malcolm Marks.
He has got that. He is from New Caledonia, which is halfway between Australia and Fiji. He is of Pacific Island stock.
But he's still very athletic. He's not.
So his Toulouse profile, which I'd probably put more stock in, actually, lists him at just a smidge, a centimetre over 6 foot, and 112 kg, which is not 120.
Take 112. I think 112 sounds reasonable.
What's that in old money? That's like 17 stone?
18? 17, 18?
18 stone, maybe.
Yeah, 17 and a half.
6 foot, 17 and a half stone. That sounds about right.
Yes.
That's still a big boy. Bigger than any England player.
Yeah, actually, the French stable of hookers are, I'm just thinking of like Bouguerit and Malvaca, Marchand.
Yeah.
Marchand.
They are ace, actually. They are
playing international rugby for so many countries.
Including England.
Including England.
Yes.
Yeah, this is exactly the point.
Yeah.
So as promising and as good and athletic our hookers are, maybe we need... I mean, maybe it's just one of those examples, and particularly when you look at England's front row, where England would be better to, I don't know, just to try something a bit different to get the best out of the players they've got, because we're really strong in some areas, but our front row is just not international, not top elite international caliber.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest guy that I can think of who's played hooker for England, and he's not that big compared to Malcolm Marks, but Jamie Blamire is a big boy, but his throwing's not good enough. So it's a tricky one.
Yeah. So can I say who I was talking to about this? I was talking to a guy who scrummaged against the Springbok front row, and one of the things he said is if he had available to him Jack Singleton, he thinks it would have made a big difference in order to, sort of take it to them a bit more. So that'd be another guy, but of course he's in Toulon and not eligible to play.
He's also not that big, is he?
I don't think he is. But it's interesting that name was brought up.
He's kind of cube shaped a bit.
Yeah, he's listed at. I've got him here at 5'11" and 109, which is fairly sizable, but yeah.
Yeah, so they were up against basically the Springbok front row, and the quote was, "If we had Singleton, we would have been able to give him a proper go."
I find that an interesting one, but I'm not a professional scrum or line-out coach.
Yeah, but just so you know, in case anyone's saying, "What's JB talking about for England?" It wasn't an England front row.
Yeah, I've worked out who it is anyway. But the only thing that's more stacked than hooker in France is scrum half. I was looking at their scrum half options. Obviously Dupont, but Luku, Saran, Quiu, Le Garrec, and there's one I'm forgetting as well. They've got 6 players. I counted basically 6 players that would walk into England's squad.
Can I say, though, they're not stacked at all.
They are.
They've got the thinnest. No, they're not. In fact, I'm going to go. You've got it the wrong way around completely. They have got the worst situation for scrum half. They've got the thinnest option. Because actually, what do they really have?
Dupont.
They have one mercurial player and nothing to replace him. Like, the other guys might be great compared to everyone else, but they're such a step down from the guy that they actually do have. They're in a worse situation. You can't replace him.
I mean, that really is first world problems. I'm so used to driving my Ferrari that everything else seems awful.
Look. If you're winning the F1 Championship year after year in a car which is twice as good, and that's why you're winning, and then you go 20% below that, you're not going to win. It's a big drop off. So actually, France got the worst scrum half situation, not the best.
Well, they have the best and the worst, you could argue, simultaneously.
I would take the French setup over England's setup. 100%. I do see your problem,
Saran would
but it's
be
a
in
nice
England's
problem
23, probably starting. Luku would be in England's 23, could well be starting.
Legarrec might be the second best of the lot.
Yeah.
He would be in England's 23.
He'd be in England's 23. Quiyu would be in England's 23. It's insane. And that's the other one that I was thinking. The one that's coming through that looks incredible as well is Jonot from Clermont. He's like 19, 20 and just immense as well. It's ridiculous.
Nice.
If you were a young French scrum half who was ridiculously good, would you not be looking for English parentage at this point?
Yes, definitely.
Or heritage?
Definitely.
100%.
Le Garrec, he sounds like he might be English. Baptiste Saran, showing some English lineage in there.
It's not obvious, is it?
I was reading about the 100-Year War recently. There's going to be lots of English lineage. The only problem, you're going back about 600 years.
Yeah. Oh, I was reading about reading about a battle earlier on, and I'll save it for the end of the podcast.
Well, we might be there. I don't know what else is going on in the rugby world, or what else we need to talk about.
Well, I thought you were getting on an aircraft to go watch South Africa versus New Zealand. Tim.
Yeah, I am on Wednesday.
Well, I think we should talk about that, shouldn't we?
Oh yeah.
That's a fairly
not necessarily about my trip, which you'll be able to follow on the YouTube channel.
Absolutely.
But, just that game. That is. In fact, I put a video up earlier, which this might be an interesting little talking point. I was speculating where the rivalry between the All Blacks and South Africa ranks in sporting rivalries worldwide, because there's no doubt it's the one in rugby. Well, at international level, it's the one. There are some pretty spicy club rivalries in rugby. And that was one of the things, actually, before I get into that, and because we cover the Premiership a lot, you take for granted sometimes how special all the history we have in the rugby clubs and between the rugby clubs that we have right here on our doorstep.
Yeah, you do. So Mark Evans and I on Economics were chatting about various formats, and one of the things which Mark came up with was referencing quite a lot of data about what people really value in club competitions, and actually it's domestic comps, and for this exact reason, I believe, which is it's the history of the rivalries.
Yeah, I think that's really fair.
In terms of football, is Argentina France up there now?
Oh, it might be. I don't know whether it would be above Argentina, Brazil.
But it's the recent stuff with Argentina, France.
Yeah.
There's very, very recent, like including this summer, even though they weren't playing each other, the rivalry seems to be growing from the World Cup, whenever it was 2 years ago.
Well, they played each other in the Olympics, didn't they? And did they have a fight or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
So even though they didn't play each other in the Copa America, obviously the naughty song was sung, and they got in trouble. Argentina got in trouble for that, and then they played each other in the Olympics. Now, in my mind, because this is how I'm wired, rather than pull your hair out and say this is awful and horrendous, this should be sort of this should be pushed because I like this rivalry now. It's one of the few international games in football that is probably going to mean something to somebody. They actually want to go and win it. I don't think England, Germany maybe to a certain degree, but that's a bit naff now. But this is a proper rivalry where the players really do not like each other. And most of the times the players love each other because they're all best players in the world and they all play at the same clubs.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is. It's a good thing for the sport, which is a bit of a perverse thing to say.
Yeah, it's not a good thing for journalists who wet themselves, but it is a good thing for the sport, and the fans actually like to watch these games. In terms of All Blacks, South Africa, is it the biggest? I mean, yeah, I guess it's got a lot of history. But is it as big as England, France?
I think it probably is. 4 World Cups and 3 World Cups, they're out on their own. Well, I'll put it this way, by 2027, the last time anyone's going to have won the World Cup that wasn't one of those two teams will be 24 years ago.
Yeah, it's a fair point, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're battling for supremacy at the top of the tree.
They really are. They're out on their own in terms of both the stats, but also just how good and consistent the teams are. Like with the last few years, Ireland have had a superb team, but have done nothing at World Cup level, and it does feel like they've got a good bunch of players who are going to have a good time for a few years, and then it might not continue. Similarly with France, like France have got some amazing things going for them. They've never won a World Cup, and if exactly to your point before, JB, if by far the best scrum half in the world and perhaps the best player in the world, if he disappears, which he will do at some point in the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years, then the drop off from that level is going to be absolutely enormous. Whereas New Zealand and South Africa just keep turning out quality, like almost too many quality players to keep in the team.
Well, there was a stat, wasn't there, that there's like 700 professional South African players in Europe. I don't know if I misremembered that, but it's some enormous amount.
It's wild.
Yeah. It's huge. And that is the problem that South Africa...
By the way, that's not just... I'm not just talking Premiership there. I'm talking like all the way down the structures.
Oh, yeah.
I could believe that.
Yeah. And it's a problem. It's a problem for South Africa that we've spoken about, and this will be another week where we get to see them address that problem, that they've had so many talented players for so long who've won them 2 World Cups, and there are almost too many players coming behind them to clearly pick, save for exceptional examples like Tim's boys, Sasha Feinberg and Ngomazulu, that it's really hard to let someone like Villy Leroux go when it's not entirely clear who the natural successor is, because there's almost too many natural successors.
Yeah. So what have we got planned in South Africa, Tim?
Arrive on Wednesday night in Cape Town, meet our friend of the pod, Lewis, and we fly to Johannesburg on Thursday morning to play golf. And then on Friday, I'm attending a lunch at Pirates Rugby Club in Johannesburg. It's like a South Africa Legends lunch thing. I've been invited there. And then watch the game on Saturday. Get the first... No slight on Johannesburg, if anyone's from Johannesburg, but I am on the very first plane out of Johannesburg on the Sunday morning.
I bet you are, Tim.
As much as anything, because I want to be stood on Table Mountain.
Away from
I want to be stood up on Table Mountain by lunchtime on Sunday.
Awesome.
Wait, just hang around in Johannesburg, see the sights.
I was there on the last trip. I haven't been to the Cape.
I don't remember you making a big song and dance of that. Do you remember making a big song and dance of Johannesburg, Phil?
Not really.
I'm really looking forward to going to that match.
I've heard Johannesburg is full of good people, good, solid, working people. Maybe we should just stay there for a little while and get to know it.
So it's a sort of double-edged sword, because it's the actual 80 minutes of rugby I'm most looking forward to. Ellis Park, it's just kind of got a kind of iconic status. It was the venue for the 95 World Cup final. The atmosphere's, everyone says it's amazing. I witnessed it up on the high.
Shame not hang around and stay.
Sorry?
Shame not hang around and stay.
Well, no, this is it. No one hangs around and stays before or after the game, because the stadium's amazing. and the atmosphere is incredible by all accounts. But the area around the ground it's the one part of South Africa I went to on my last trip where I felt like, I really don't want to hang around here. I want to get the hell out.
It can't be worse than Stade de France.
Yes,
Jesus Christ,
it's way worse than Stade de France.
What?
It's the one part I felt unsafe.
Oh Christ! Like I thought, basically where Stade de France is like part war zone is horrendous.
It's awful. But this was comfortably worse. So yeah, the ground's amazing, but no one hangs around after the game. They all just get the hell out of there.
Oh, sounds awesome.
Anyway, so then lots of stuff on the Cape, including kayaking with whales and dolphins. Much against your better judgment.
Did I tell you that on the podcast not to do this? Or was it over WhatsApp? Don't do this.
What? Yeah,
don't do it, mate. Don't do it.
Lewis is an experienced kayaker, is what he said. So,
well, best of luck. Hope it goes well. So that's a nice little segue, actually. So 1945, it is the Battle of Rivalry, or the Massacre of Rivalry. It is the British Army combined with the Indian Army surrounding the Japanese on an island, and only 24 out of 1,000 Japanese soldiers survived. The biggest massacre of its type. How did those Japanese soldiers die?
Well, I'm guessing it's got something to do with water, so stuck in the hull of a boat when it went down.
Nope.
It's not.
They were kind of on land. They were on swampy land.
It's not. There was a lot of fire bombings of of Japan at that time. It's not something like that, was it?
No, Remri is just off. I think it's a small tropical island.
Okay. And it's not something like a mismatch of technology where...
I think it's off Myanmar.
Myanmar, oh, okay.
It's around there.
Yeah. In the Pacific Theatre. It's not something like a mismatch of technology where the Japanese were fighting with old technology.
It's exactly the opposite.
Opposite of a mismatch of technology. Japan's technology was
the most brutally.
Go on.
It is the most brutally basic way to die. And these guys died suddenly, involuntarily, and according to some records, to the absolute horror of the British and the Indians.
It's not like a suffocation type thing.
Self-combusted.
No. So, I hope you enjoy your kayaking, Tim, because the Japanese decided to retreat something like 9 miles across marshes. Now, preceding the battle, allegedly, they killed most of the wildlife and most of the resources, particularly the deer. And at this point, all of the crocodiles went into hibernation. But then when 1,000 Japanese troops tried to retreat across 9 miles of marsh, apparently it is the biggest killing of humans by crocodiles ever to occur.
Very hungry crocodiles starved of deer meat, bit of venison.
Yeah, and some of them were experienced kayakers, but it'll be fine.
Other than that, I've got Franchuk on my list, Stellenbosch,
nice,
brilliant,
Hermanus, and obviously Cape Town as well.
Fantastic.
So yeah, looking forward to it.
That will be awesome.
Sounds like the dream, right? Well, I wish you best of luck there. And I'll be following your escapades very keenly on YouTube.
I'll be following your escapades with Beardmore and Beardmore and Beardmore and Beardmore on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Absolutely, as you should do. Oh, can I talk about that? No, I'll save it for a Patreon another time.
All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your awful food, no exercise trip with your family, JB.
Yes, thank you.
Phil, enjoy lurking on the internet. Always watching.
Always.
And thank you very much. Let the boys end.
This podcast is brought to you by eHarmony, the dating app to find someone you can be yourself with. Why doesn't eHarmony allow copy and paste in first messages? Because you are unique, and your conversations should reflect that. eHarmony wants you to find someone who will get you. How are you going to know who gets you? If people send you the same generic conversation starters they message everyone else. Conversations that actually help you get to know each other. Imagine that. Get who gets you on eHarmony. Sign up today.
Discover Hydro, the best kept secret in fitness. Hydro is the state-of-the-art at-home rower that engages 86% of your muscles, delivering the ultimate full-body workout in just 20 minutes. From advanced to beginner, Hydro has over 500 classes shot worldwide and taught by Olympians and world-class athletes. For a 30-day risk-free trial, go to hydro.com and use code ROW450 to save $450 on a Hydro Pro rower. That's HYDROW.com, code ROW450.
We all have dreams. Dream home renovations, dream vacations, or sending our kids to their dream colleges. But finding straightforward ways to turn those dreams into realistic goals, that's where things get tricky. Merrill understands that. That's why, with a dedicated Merrill advisor, you get a personalized plan and a clear path forward. And having the bull at your back helps your whole financial life move with you. So when your plans change, Merrill is with you every step of the way. Go to ml.com/bullish to learn more. Merrill, a Bank of America company. What would you like the power to do? Investing involves risk. Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith Incorporated, registered broker-dealer, registered investment advisor, member SIPC.